Sí, perfectamente. Vale. Esto es de alguien, casi. Yes.
Vaerenbergh. He is an associate professor in Didactics of Mathematics here at the University of Cantabria. He's an expert in artificial intelligence with more than 70 papers published. Now his book about theory.
Thank you, Diego. I've added these words to the title for researchers because this will be specifically for researchers. So good morning, good afternoon almost. So I think I have 45 minutes, is that right? And then more or less 50 minutes for discussion. I decided to divide this talk in two parts. There's a boring part, right? A bit about history. And then there's a more useful part where I will show examples of how we can use this. So I will start with the boring part, if that's okay. It's about well, history. So first of all, I want to say we live in a very strange year now. I don't know if you noticed this in the newspaper. Yes? Okay, thank you. The giant tortoise racing, anybody saw this in January of this year? No? It was great. Genetically modified tortoises. I think it was something unique, actually. Maybe you saw this then in March. The Pope changed his wardrobe. Anybody saw this in the newspapers? Yes? So maybe he wants to attract young people to religion. I don't know really what the reasoning is behind that. And it got stranger and stranger. This month, some bears were spotted hiking in the mountains. Anybody saw this? No? What's that? It's a fake image? Oh, yeah, of course. So all of these images are fake, you know this, if you've seen the Pope, although they look very realistic. They look photorealistic. They were generated by an artificial intelligence, specifically by Midjourney version 5. And that's what we have now. We live in a time when we cannot know if a picture was generated or if it was a true picture. So there's Midjourney, there's two others. There's DALL-E by OpenAI, there's Stable Diffusion. All of these generate very realistic images, and they do so by just giving it a prompt. You probably know this. By just giving it a simple phrase, we can generate these images. I will leave you later the PDF of the presentation so you can check out where these come from. But this is a strange time. Some call it the post-truth because we don't know anymore what is true, what is fake. And we can ask ourselves, and now this is the boring part, how did we get to this point? So here goes a little bit of history because I want to emphasize a few milestones. So for me, the first milestone would be in 2005. I don't know if anybody of you remembers this or saw that. A few grad students in, I think it was MIT, they wanted to call out fake conferences. This is to say conferences where the papers are not really reviewed. So they made a program that can generate entire articles. They wrote a grammar and they generated that. Well, they had a form later then on their website. You can see the form there. And at the right, you can see one of the papers they generated. Complete LaTeX paper with text that reads like real text. But if you read it well, you see that it's bogus. It's made up. And that paper was accepted in one conference. there's a conference. It was accepted in a non-reviewed paper track. So probably the reviewers only read the abstract and then accepted it. So once the conference found out, they rejected the paper, but the authors, nevertheless, they did a fundraiser, traveled to the venue, and in the hallway did their presentation. So they have all of that documented on their website. And I think it's the first milestone in this generative AI. It's not really using much AI, it's all rule-based, but still it's a sign of a times that were to come. Now, in the 2000s, you all probably know that machine learning started to get really important and to improve a lot. The second milestone for me would be the year 2012, when deep learning started. Then it became clear that by using GPUs, we could really do a lot of computations in parallel and process a lot more data. And suddenly, artificial intelligence, or machine learning in this case, became much more powerful. Google did some experiments with lots of GPUs in parallel at that time. But this is not generative. The generative part started a little bit later in 2014, when the generative adversarial networks were invented, or GAN networks. Now, these are neural networks. It's actually a competition of two neural networks. At the bottom, the green part is a generator neural network. It takes as an input noise and generates, for instance, here, images of digits, or it might be in later iterations, these were photorealistic pictures, for instance, from people's faces. So there's a generator. It creates fake images. And then there's a discriminator, which learns how to discriminate between true and fake. So as learning goes on, both of these get better and better. And at the end of the training, you have a very good generator and a very good discriminator. And hundreds of these models have appeared. NVIDIA had a very famous one called StyleGAN, which generates headshots of people that don't exist. And they have been used in the internet to create fake profiles, etc. This was this really started some kind of a revolution in generative AI. So another milestone would be then transformer paper. You probably heard of this, some of you. This is when researchers by Google found out that they could make simpler neural network structures that were easier to parallelize, and they could, once again, they could do much more with text than what was possible before. There we have the structure. Now the transformers, the T of transformers is actually the T from GPT, because all these models are based on transformers. So that's a bit of history. In the years 2020, almost there, we had foundation models, which are big models. Some of you work on this, so you know this better than I do. Big models trained on a lot of data that can later be fine-tuned. And there we find the initial GPT model built by OpenAI. This is trained on text. So it could write text, but it wasn't that good. And we also had this other model, BERT by Google. Also could make some text, was interesting. Basically, they predict the next word in a text. So if you give it a prompt, they predict the next word, and then the next, and then the next, and they write a text. But these were not that capable at that point. But then came GPT-2. I don't know if you heard that in 2019. That was the next iteration. This was interesting because the company behind this model, OpenAI, they did not want to release it. So they released a press statement saying that this model is too dangerous to release to the public, because they thought it was going to spam the internet, create fake messages, interfering with a lot of a lot of society. So they didn't want to release it. They released a partial model. But then, strangely, the year after that, they made a next iteration, GPT-3, and they did give access to people to that one, at least to the API to use it. So this is a large language model, large because it has a lot of, it's very large. It has a lot of parameters internally, 175 billion. It's trained on tens of billions of documents, the entirety of Wikipedia, books, the internet, and it does the same. It predicts the next word. And that is when it became clear that this was very powerful, because it's, if you give it a headline of a newspaper article, it writes the entire article. And if you read the article, you see that it's made up, but still it generates the entire article. So the next year they used that to train it, to fine tune it on code. So if you give it, if you say, I want to write a program that does something, it writes the code for you. Or, well, GitHub Copilot, I'll show that in a minute. GitHub Copilot helps us write lines of code. So it will give us suggestions and we can accept them or change them. What else do we have? Yeah, last year, suddenly it became possible to generate these images because within this neural network with the transformer structure, they included image generation capabilities. And we saw DALL-E by OpenAI again, which generated these nice images. Then in August of that year, there was an open source model that did the same. Now that opened another Pandora's box where everybody could suddenly train its own models, make extensions. Next, we had, oh, this one is pretty important. ChatGPT, you've probably heard of that, I assume. So where GPT-3 was a model that simply predicted the next line and could write entire text, for ChatGPT, they included human feedback. So they trained it on conversation. That's why it's model 3.5. And well, that opened another Pandora's box, I guess. But they managed to close it a little bit because there's a lot of safeguards in place. So we cannot use it to write things about war or bomb threats or anything. So the release was a bit, well, it was pretty controlled. There were other models. For instance, the same month, Facebook released a model, Galactica it was called. It was supposed to be able to write academic papers, but it didn't seem to work and it made up too much facts that didn't exist. So they actually canceled it. And then they were, well, they launched new models after that. But still, it's mainly this other company that has all the models now. Yeah, Microsoft entered the scene also because they had a partnership with OpenAI. In February of this year, we had suddenly GPT was integrated into Bing Chat, and suddenly we could use Bing. I think I just want to ask, who of us used Bing last year? Who of us is using Bing this year? That's 6, 7, 8 hands. Well, I guess it's because of this, right? Okay, so that is something. So, and here a last interesting point. This is a model by Facebook or by Meta, which is the company behind Facebook. It's kind of open source. It's open source for researchers, but it cannot be used in production. Sorry, and commercial for commercial purposes. Now, this is all very interesting because you can see there's a lot of advances. If we go, for instance, to this year, to March, things are speeding up. And I'm just going to give a quick list of things that happened in March so you can get an idea. Then we'll talk about it. So these are by date. Each one of this could be called a major advancement or a game changer. People call each of these game changers. I'm not going to talk about April. Well, just I opened Twitter today and I'm not going to talk about it, but just so we get an idea. Valley X here, the third one, that is a model that you give it a recording of your own voice, and then you write a sentence in Chinese maybe, and it produces the audio of your voice pronouncing in perfect Chinese that sentence. So we can hear how our own voice sounds without accent in another language. That's for voice. What else do we have? Well, GPT-4 became available to everybody here. It's paid access, but still it's not too expensive not to try. Midjourney version 5, which was a major improvement over version 4, which is what generated the images we saw before, which I think they're photorealistic in some cases. What else? Gen 2, this company is working on video generation. So if you see it now, it's kind of artificial. Well, artificial. But give it a few months and this will improve a lot. What else did we have? Google had a chatbot as well, which didn't turn out that popular. What else? Yeah. At the end, we can see also that there are private companies like Bloomberg, which handles financial data, which now take these giant models and fine-tune them on private data. So that is something we will see a lot in the future. fine-tuning on private data. And well, they use it obviously for commercial and for investment purposes. So having seen all this, having seen that can be used for image, text, code, video, I'm just going to give a quick definition, because we can ask ourselves now, what is generative AI? This would be my definition. It's a type of artificial intelligence technology that can create unique original content automatically, including text, code, images, audio, and video. So what we have there is, well, it's unique and original. It creates content that has never been seen before. So if it makes a text, if we Google that text, we won't find it anywhere. If it makes a picture, it's not a picture that is taken in parts from other pictures. It's a new picture. And it does so automatically. That's also important because it's an automatic technology. Now, as I showed, this has been around for some time, but it's mainly the ones that have appeared in the last 2 or 3 years that generate these very sophisticated contents. Now, these new ones are based on large language models. So when we see these letters LLM, it refers to that. And they're trained on huge amounts of data. So I've also included something I find interesting. Typically, when we give it the same instruction twice, it will produce a different output. So that's also interesting for us. We can try it different times. So that's the first part, the boring part. Let's now see a bit of this in action, because we saw images, video, code, text. I'm going to focus on text from now on, because as researchers, we might be more interested in text, I assume. Text and code also. Who does text? ChatGPT does text. ChatGPT does text. So is there anybody who hasn't used ChatGPT here in the room? I assume maybe 2 persons, as I can see, 3 persons maybe. I'm going to show the basics, so we all have the same starting point. I assume that lots of people use ChatGPT and some use it intensively, and there are probably. I'm talking about myself. I use it intensively, but for the right reasons, as I will show, because obviously this can be used for the wrong reasons and the right reasons, and we will talk about that as well. Quick 3-minute presentation. So how do we give a quick 3-minute presentation about ChatGPT? We asked ChatGPT, that's right. So this is a video. So this is the interface, right? And I wrote this prompt: can you help me create a 3-minute presentation on ChatGPT? Later it will be on top, so you'll see it better. The prompt is better if we include some details. So I say it's for a general audience, because maybe if I don't say that, he thinks I'm a marketeer and he gives me something for a company. I don't want that. I say it's for a general audience. I ask it to list the key points. I don't want it to write paragraphs, which is what it typically does. I just want the key points. Time allocation. I want it to tell me how much time to dedicate to every point. And use Markdown. That's a simple formatting style. So I wanted to give it some formatting. So I'm going to play the video and pause it sometimes, because the video is shorter than 3 minutes, but I want to add some comments. I cannot do it here. I have to do it there. Just, yeah, there we go. All right. So, sure, here's a 3-minute presentation on ChatGPT, it says. All right, I'm going to pause this. So it says introduction, 15 seconds. ChatGPT is a large language model. We talked about that. It's based on GPT 3.5. Now, that's not entirely true, because it also exists for GPT-4, but this model doesn't know anything about GPT-4. It's based on information it had until 2021. Its purpose is to generate human-like responses to text-based conversations. That's right. It's a conversation assistant. Let's continue. Okay, how does it work? It uses deep learning to understand language. Well, there's a discussion about if it really understands or if it's just repeating patterns. The discussion is also where's the frontier between both. It's trained on vast amounts of data. It can respond to a wide range of topics and questions. Now, that is very interesting, because you probably have seen something in the news that this can do exams, and it can be as good as an expert in some fields. Human experts are still better, of course, than a ChatGPT in their own field. The thing is, ChatGPT is close to human experts in many fields. Not 1, not 2, not 5, not 10, but hundreds, literally. So I think that's one of the big strengths. It's almost as good as human expert in hundreds of fields. That's more or less what I understand here. It can generate its own responses. Let's see what else it tells us. Okay, I messed this up. Benefits. Okay. It can provide instant and personalized customer service for a company, certainly interesting, but also if we want to write emails, this can help us. Now, the next point is very important. It can assist with language learning and translation. Now, this is a very good translator. This is much better than Google Translate, than DeepL. If you try this, you will see that since it has all the context, it can write much better translations. And specifically, GPT-4 is better than GPT 3.5. But it's very advanced. So we can translate the next text, but we could write our own prompt in different languages and it will understand it. Or we could say, okay, I'm going to give you some text, but there are some words I don't know in the language I want. It will understand what we want and do the translation. It can generate creative writing prompts. So that's also interesting. This is mainly very useful for inspiration. If we are stuck on something and we need to know how to continue, it can give us a lot of inspiration. What else? Can help with research and provide quick access to information. Now, I'm not really sure about that. If you ask it about facts, you know that it will lie. It will make up facts sometimes, and it will do so very confidently. So it's a bit dangerous. It's, yes, well, we always have to check. We have to verify what it says if that's true, but for inspiration, it's definitely interesting. So the last bits it says here, okay, I lost my pointer. There we go. Limitations, it's not perfect, may provide inaccurate responses. That's very important to take into account. It may struggle with complex and technical language. Oh, it is not good in mathematics. Maybe you know that. If you give it a problem, you write the text of a problem, and it has to do some mathematical calculation, it will make mistakes. It doesn't do mathematical reasoning very well. Well, it doesn't do it actually. But that changed in the month of March, or was it April? I forgot. GPT-4, if you have the paying subscription version, it can now connect with external services. So what it does now, if you have the paying version, you write a mathematical problem, it detects that it's a mathematical problem, it connects to Wolfram Alpha, which solves it, turns it back, and it gives you, in many cases, a perfect solution. So things are changing very quickly. So conclusion, it's an exciting development in the field of natural language processing. It has potential to revolutionize how we communicate with technology, and it's developing. Thank you for listening. So I think it took me a little more than 3 minutes, but we saw the basics and we already saw some of the problems. And most interestingly, we saw all of this with a more or less live demonstration of GPT. We saw what it does. We can ask it anything like this, and it gives us a short outline of a presentation. So you know that there are other ones as well. I talked about Bing. Should we use ChatGPT? Should we use Bing? Well, let's ask Bing. What are the advantages of using Bing over ChatGPT? So Bing says, it says a lot of things. So it has a search engine. Now it has an image creator included. So if we say create and then we say something, it will understand that it has to create an image. It will ask DALL-E to create the image, which is fun. Not really useful for us today, I guess. But it has two very important points. The last one is here at the end, set. Bing has access to the internet. So when we launch it a query, it will look up things. So it's not like ChatGPT, which in the basic version is restricted to what it knows. This accesses the internet and looks up things. And also, as you can see here, it gives us all these references. So every time it makes an assertion, it tries to give us a reference with a link. So this is much easier for us. We can verify where this information comes from. For research, it's much more interesting. Still, since it looks things up on the internet, it doesn't distinguish very well in between, for instance, academic articles and blog posts, which sometimes can be a problem. Now, that's the basic usage. We're going to talk about how this can use us for research. Well, once again, I'm going to ask, I'm not going to do anything now. I'm just going to ask it. I will comment on that. How can ChatGPT help a researcher? Give me a list of key points. Oh no, I shut it here. I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button. We're back. Okay. Oh. Okay. Thank you. How can it help? This is a long list. I'm going to focus on a few ones behind after that. Generating research ideas. Not very sure about that. Providing background information on the topic. That's a bit dangerous. Assisting in literature reviews. It can do that, and we'll see later how it can do that. Identifying relevant sources and citations. I wouldn't go there. Answering specific research questions. Well, maybe it gives the right answer. Maybe not. We have to check it, but it can explore a little bit. Offering statistical and data analysis support. Maybe it could tell us a technique, but still it has to understand a lot of the data. Creating research proposals and grant applications. No, that's where it can help. It writes text perfectly. So if we give it some bullet points, it can convert the bullet points into a well-written paragraph. And we obviously review that, we polish it, but it can do that. Proofreading and editing research documents, that's more of the same. So if we give it a text and say that English is not our first language, oh, I broke everything. Should I continue? So this is a typical case. If we write in a language that is not our first language, we have to do some proofreading, or we have to ask a professional translator to do this. ChatGPT does a pretty well job to do this. I'm going to show this later on. Assisting in manuscript preparation for publication, that's more of the same. And the last one, providing feedback and suggestions for improving research. Now, this can also be done. So when we have written a paper, we could see what happens if the first review round is by ChatGPT. Maybe it gives us some valuable response. So I'm going to talk about 4 use cases. The first is how it can help us with writing. Second, how it can help us with coding. Then how it can help us with manipulating data, some data wrangling. And the last one will be literature review, how it can help us process articles and summarize maybe. So first thing we could do, I already talked a little bit about this. Is there a technical problem? I will continue meanwhile. We could ask ChatGPT to solve this, right? Yes. But better let Danielle do it. Is it there? Okay. All right. No. All right, thank you. So we can continue. I pressed a single key, and that broke everything. So let's see how we can use this. Oh, okay. So if we want to translate the text, we could simply ask, translate this text like this, translate the following text to English, and then we put our text. That will work, but maybe it's not the style we want, because we would like a formal, literary, academic text. So we have to be more specific. And we can say it's something like this. A better prompt is, I want you to act as an academic researcher. I will pass you text in Spanish, which you will translate to English. You may change phrases. Well, we can leave that out. And their order to improve the readability without altering the meaning of the text. The result should be formal and academic English. The first text to translate is this. Now, this is very long, but it's very effective. And I'm going to show you what happens if we do that. So here we have the prompt. I want you to act as an academic researcher. This is a text. It's a text from an article from the social sciences. And this is the response by GPT-4. So if you read that response, it's well written. I wouldn't know how to improve it. So let's try another one. Oh no, okay. Well, you can see that I would say it's a perfect translation. I'm not a translator, but to me it looks very good. So one thing we did here, we asked it to take a personality, a kind of role. We use something in English called personas. We ask it to take on a specific role. And as a matter of fact, there's a repository of prompts here. That is a community effort where there's a whole list of roles you can see that can be given to ChatGPT to perform these prompts. That works very well. So here we have act as a Linux terminal. I want you to act as a Linux terminal, and then it will be very proficient with all the comments we might want to have. So that's a very interesting repository. That's as far as translation. Something else we can do, and I already mentioned this, we can do proofreading. So if we ask it to proofread the text, it will improve the text and change some words maybe. But we found this interesting Chrome extension. So what it does is, when you ask ChatGPT to proofread a text, in the response, it will highlight the changes, like what we have when we edit, for instance, a Word document with the changes marked. I'm going to show how this is, but we can use prompts like this, proofread this, or be more specific. I want you to change only the grammar, or you can rewrite parts of it. So that's an example. It's the same ChatGPT interface, but we have now these extra buttons which mark us exactly what has been changed. So proofread this, lightly improving the clarity and the flow. Now this is very useful. I asked it to improve the clarity and the flow, and you can see it has done a lot of changes. If I only ask it to proofread, it will probably only change 5 words and correct spelling mistakes, etc. I can ask it to do only the grammar, for instance. But if we have this and we're writing a manuscript, we can easily cherry pick the ones we want and the ones we don't want. We don't have to sift through the entire paragraph to see what has been changed. So this, I think, is very useful. And as a matter of fact, there are commercial services that have been working on this for years. And like the one I mentioned here on this site, Grammarly, I think it's, yeah, Grammarly does this. But it turns out now you can do this, or Grammarly certainly does more things, but the basic stuff you can do it right now with just this extension on top of ChatGPT. So something else we might want to do, maybe if we were writing a paper, we want to structure our text. So I'm going to show you a short Twitter thread to give that gives some tips on how to structure text. So for instance, something that is used often is topic sentences. Topic sentences are short sentences that tell us what the paragraph is about, and we can use that to see if the flow of our paper is correct. Now, if we have paragraphs written, we can give them to ChatGPT with this prompt, please write a topic sentence for this paragraph. ChatGPT knows what the topic sentence is. It will give us a topic sentence for the paragraph. And we can do that for all the paragraphs, and then we can see if the flow of the paper is correct. And other things we can do, transition sentences. So obviously in some parts of the paper, it's important that the story is correctly told and that the transitions are good. We can give it 2 paragraphs and say something like what we have here. Please write a transition sentence to connect the 2 paragraphs. And it will find correct wording for a transition, which is very useful and sometimes might be hard to come up with. And the last one, so the introduction of a paper and the conclusions require to be well motivated and they have to have a good flow. So if we have a paragraph and we want it, if we have a paragraph or some paragraphs for the introduction, but it doesn't really read like an introduction, we could ask ChatGPT to rewrite it like an introduction, because papers have typical introduction styles. So this would be the prompt. Please rewrite the following paragraph as an introduction. And it's very easy to try this out, and maybe we like the result. So those were some use cases for writing. So in general, so we're having a conversation with this model. So if it tells us something and we're not entirely happy with the result, we can enter the conversation. We can ask it to improve a part of it. We can specify anything, and most times it understands us. Typically, we will go from the most general prompts. We will start with a general case and explain something. And then within the conversation, give it more details, be more specific every time until we get the text or the results we want from it. As I showed before, we will try to tell about the style, the context, well, often give it formatting tips. And it's also very useful to give it examples. I showed, I think I showed one where I give the example, I want it in this style, and then it follows the style actually. So, before the talk, somebody mentioned prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is a very popular buzzword now. So the prompt is the instruction that we give to the AI here. And as you can see, not all prompts are the same. There's actually an art of prompting, an art of writing a correct prompt, as you've obviously seen by now. So prompt engineering is now a recognized skill in computer science. If you go to LinkedIn, people mention prompt engineering in their curriculum, and there are online courses, there are books, there are videos, there are repositories on prompt engineering. It's an art. I'm not sure how long this will be the case, because maybe the next version of ChatGPT renders all of this obsolete. But still, at the moment, it's very important to write correct prompts. And I've also read if ChatGPT doesn't give you the results you want, it's probably because you didn't write the prompt correctly. So it's still very important at this point. Also, there's a nice citation here. ChatGPT is like a consultant that understands a lot about the world. So as I said before, it's expert or almost expert in a lot of fields, but it needs more context on your specific situation. If we ask it to write us text on what is ChatGPT, maybe it will give us text for a 10-year-old. We have to give it, or we can ask it, we could ask it, explain it like I'm 5 years old, and it will explain it in simpler terms. We have to give it this context. So I talked about how to use this. I also said before that there are allowed uses and uses that are not as much allowed. We could ask us, is this allowed by conferences, by journals? Because students will obviously try to see what the limits are. Can they generate entire paragraphs? So there are some guidelines. So the first, I think, who published some guidelines was this conference on machine learning, ICML, one of the 4 or 5 big ones. They prohibited it. In January, they had their paper deadline. They said it was prohibited, all use. But then, because there was some backlash, they specified, okay, I've marked it here. They prohibit text produced entirely by large language models, but it can be used for polishing text, proofreading, etc. So inspiration, etc. obviously also enters in that description. So this was, I think, well, at least the first time I saw guidelines by an institution on this, on the use of this kind of technology. So a few weeks ago, we saw something similar in the journals by Elsevier, who in their author guidelines included some paragraphs on a declaration on generative AI in scientific writing. And there they say, if you use generative AI, you have to disclose it at the end. They don't want you to add ChatGPT as a co-author, for instance. That is not done. They want you to disclose it at the end, include some paragraph saying how it was used and the reason, etc. In my opinion, this is something transitionary. I think this is something we do now, but in the future, because in the future maybe this will be obvious that we use it. For me, it's a bit like the autocorrect in Word. Nobody is disclosing that they used autocorrect in Word or in any program. But we're at the point at which these journals at least ask us to disclose it. Now, that's as far as what I wanted to talk about for writing. Let's quickly see some other cases. Programming. So I talked about it can do text as well. Sorry, code as well. So we're going to ask Bing to help us with some programming. Yeah, it's a bit light. Write a Python script that generates 3 clusters of data. Do the Gaussian noise that overlaps slightly. Include a plot. Export the data as CSV, comma separated value, including a column for the label of the cluster. Now that's something we can typically see. It's an easy task in data science projects maybe. If we pass this prompt to Bing, Bing does something like this. It gives us this Python code. It's very well formatted. It's clean code, and every block of code has its own comment saying what the text will do, which is actually what we would like to have. The code, well, this time, with this prompt, it came out perfectly. I didn't have to correct anything. Typically, if we enter more specific case, we will have to correct some things. But here it came out perfectly. And it does everything, including the plot. And then we export the data and we make our CSV file. Now, this is great. And we will have to take that into account if we are teachers that ask for homework. We can go more in detail. I told a bit earlier about Copilot. Imagine now we have a program like this and we want to write it ourselves. We want to maybe have an assistant that helps us with specific lines of code. So I'm going to show what Copilot is capable of. Anybody of you used Copilot? No? Well, maybe if you can raise hands quickly. There's a group of people that do use Copilot. So the people that use Copilot, would you be okay with stopping using Copilot tomorrow? No stopping. Okay. That's my experience as well. Once you use it and you see how it works, I wouldn't call it addictive, but it's extremely useful. So we're going to see what it does. So Copilot is basically a collaboration between, again, OpenAI, which made GPT, and that's fine-tuned on code for GitHub owned by Microsoft. So this is a plugin you can install in Visual Studio Code, the editor Visual Studio Code, and let's see how it works. So this is another video I made. So in this video, I'm asking it to write a script, or to help me with a script at least. I'm going to help it with the coding. And I want to read the data I generated previously. I want to train a machine learning classifier. I want to plot it, and I want to report the accuracy. So first, I'm going to write at the beginning of my file what I want this script to do, because typically at the beginning, we write some comment. And as you will see, it will write text in italics in gray, which is the suggestion. If I press tabulation on my keyboard, the suggestion turns into accepted text or accepted code. So I'm going to show this and command it on the fly. So there below we have the icon of Copilot, so it's active now. So I start writing the text and it already is suggesting because it's trying to read my mind. Script that data from clusters.csv and plots, using pandas, and then plots it. Okay. Then I continue on the next line. Now it has learned that I want to change lines. It will use that later. trains an SVM. I give some parameters. I wanted to have a Gaussian kernel. I wanted to train it on 80% of the data, use the rest for the remaining 20%. Okay, it will plot the decision boundaries. That's fine. I can use that. I also want to report the accuracy. Okay, report the, it knows what I want. Okay, and now things go fast because it's suggesting the code. I'm just pressing tab to accept the code. I can intervene. If I'm not okay, I say load the data. It suggested some code, but I wanted to know that my data has 3 columns, X, Y, and label. So I say, okay, there's a label, that's my data. I have X, Y, and label. Also, there's a first row that's a header. So I'll say first row, and it says is header. That's good. That's good. So it does the code automatically here. Well, it does all automatically because it's actually a very common and simple script, but still. Plot the data, split into training and test. Okay, it does a split. I don't like that split. I want to use the standard function, which is train test split. So I say in the comment, use train test split. Okay, then it loads the package, does the code. It's a bit long. I check if it's okay. Okay, that's okay. Let's continue. It knows what I want next. I want to train the SVM. There's the fit. Now what did I want? I want to plot it. First predict on the test set. Plot the decision boundary. No, I don't know how to do the decision boundary. I would have to look that up on Stack Overflow. But I have it already. Basically, we generate a grid of points and test for all of the points. There it is. I assume this works. I will check it. If it doesn't work, I'll go back and ask again. And then report accuracy. Now I wanted to say accuracy, so I write capital A, and it knows that I want to write the word accuracy, and it completes this. Okay. Now it starts doing other things. So it's done. I press execute, and now first it will generate the picture. Now the image is on my other monitor, so there's the image that comes out. Good. Those are the data. Then it will train the SVM, plot the decision boundaries, which is what's happening now. There's the plot, data with decision boundaries. And then when I close this, it will tell me the last bit, accuracy 88%. So that was quick. Typically, that would take us more time. But I wanted to see you. This auto-completes code. When we write a comment, it will typically know what we want and auto-complete it. If we don't like it, we can be more specific in the comment. And again, this is a very simple script. It's very difficult to find this on the internet. So if we go to more specific packages and more specific use cases, it will be more difficult. But still, it learns about our coding style. And when you use this, and I'm going to ask for confirmation, it sometimes looks like it's reading your mind. I don't know if that's your experience as well. Confirmed. It looks like it's reading your mind. So this is a tweet by one of the top AI researchers and programmers, Andrej Karpathy, who, when he does a tweet, it's often something that's going to happen, or it represents a trend that is about to happen. And at the end of December, he said he is now using Copilot to write 80% of his code. And the code he writes, well, the code Copilot writes has an 80% accuracy. So has to go and correct it. But still, it's a huge speed up. Obviously, this is a commercial service. If you want this, you have to pay the €10 a month. That's right. It's not free. But for academic users, it is free. So if you have an email at the university, you can do these 2 steps and have all of this in Visual Studio Code if you use Visual Studio Code. So the 2 steps you have to do is sign up to the GitHub Global Campus. This is a campus for teachers, basically. And then teachers and students. And then in Visual Studio Code, install the plugin, and it will link with your GitHub and see that you're an academic user and give you this functionality. So I recommend you try it. It's really useful to speed up coding. I had, for instance, ideas lying around of things I wanted to code. I knew it would take me 3 hours to code this myself, looking up on the internet, and I can do it in 10 minutes now with this. So it's extremely useful. Small caveat, check the privacy settings. I'm not using it on any sensitive proprietary code, but as I believe, it's pretty secure to use this. But if you're working on code that is very sensitive, you might want to check the privacy in order to see if it's not sharing your code with others. But as I could see, it's all taken care of, and we shouldn't worry too much. But still, when you use something like this, you have to know that it reads all the text from your code. And if you're working in a folder where all your files from a project are, it will read the other files from your project to see if that can help predict your own code. So last case here, well, we saw how to have it write a script, how to have it help us with the writing itself. We can ask it for individual lines of code. We could also ask it to structure the code. So if we have a big project, we can ask it for advice on how to structure things. There's a prompt for Bing. I need to structure my code for the project. It's written in Python, contains data, notebooks, source files, train models, documentation, etc. How should I structure the files? So Bing will tell us, okay, use version control, dependency management system. It will tell us about how to, what tests to include, how to organize the source code. It will even give us, this is what I wanted, a suggested folder structure. And then we can converse with them. We can ask details about anything. How should I do version control, or what should go into the test folder? Can you help me? We can use it for all of this, and it will give us hints on good practices. So to finish this use case, I think this sums up an idea I haven't really mentioned, but it says if you haven't learned to code, AI won't get you from 0 to 1, but if you have, AI will get you from 1 to infinity. So what this basically says is you need to have some basic notion of programming, as is the same in writing. You need to recognize a well-written text, because otherwise it won't take you from 0 to 1. All right, I have two more cases that are pretty short. Data wrangling. Data wrangling is something what we do a lot. What is data wrangling? Well, let's ask ChatGPT. Data wrangling is basically cleaning, transforming, and mapping raw data. It's basically handling data and preparing it in order to use. How can this help? I'm going to give one short example here. Well, 3 short examples. For instance, if you are on a website, we're doing some bird sighting. This is Bing. So I have some data here. Imagine that we want to use this data in our project. This is a table. We could start copying the table, formatting, but we can ask GPT right away, or Bing in this case, which uses GPT. We can say, okay, convert this data into a comma-separated value list, where the separation is done by a semicolon. So in Bing, as you might know, we have a sidebar now, which can operate on a website or on the data from a website. So it's something like this. We get our prompt there, convert the data, I say. And below that, it takes all the data and converts it into the format I need, comma-separated values in this case. Is this useful? Well, it saves us time, I think. I could even ask it to convert this into a bullet list. And I want you to give it to me in this format. So I give it one example, and I will learn from that example and do all the rest into the same, convert all the rest into the same format. So there's the same here. It took the date, and the asterisk is for converting it to bold, then the name, and then the number is, it understood that the number is this. It's the count. I want the count to be in brackets, and it found this correctly. So I can copy and paste this into my own data and use it right away. I think this is very useful. But obviously, the data was already provided in a table format. We could also use this on data that is in text. For instance, to remember good times, we have a COVID timeline here. I could say the same, make a bullet point list, and I want you for every element, I want you to state the title and a very short summary. And it will give us this. December, I have a summary of 10 or less words for every item. So you can probably imagine where you can take this pretty far. So that's a bit of data wrangling. I'm not going to touch more, just a bit of the surface, because I want to talk quickly about one more case. Literature review. You might be interested in this. So I said already that ChatGPT imagines facts, and in the jargon it's called hallucinating. It makes things up, and it doesn't warn you. So there are some services that are specifically trained to work on academic literature. For instance, this one, it's very recommendable to try out. Elicit. Basically, we can ask a research question, and it has previously it has processed text of millions of articles, and it tries to answer the questions with what it learned from these articles using a GPT like NetBehind. So I'll just show what the results would be there. What is the impact of creatine on cognition? Not sure how to pronounce it, but that's one of the standard questions there. So what it does then, it gives us a list of papers. From every paper, it gives us a phrase of the summary of the abstract. And then we can continue clicking. We can click on one paper. If we click on a section, it will summarize the section. It will try to respond some standard questions about what the study is about, what the methodology was, what data was used. Very interesting. I think it's, well, small caveat, I think it's mostly used in social sciences because it looks for studies that use participants, but still we can see what it does because it's easy to use. So that's, yeah, and then we can ask it to summarize, etc., or to compare even papers. Another one that is also very useful, Chat PDF. It's a very good name. Basically, it's, and I'm going to show a quick video of this. It's a website where you can upload a PDF and then you can chat with the PDF. I'm going to show you a quick demo of this. I don't know anything about astrophysics, but that was 2 days ago. I went to Archive and I downloaded the last paper in the astrophysics field. And that's the paper. Have you read it? No? Well, we can learn quickly about what it is. This Chat PDF, I drop it here, processing. Okay, there's the summary. We explore the role of mass and environment in quenching problem. But I don't know anything about this. It suggests 3 questions. So I click the first one, what methods were used? And it will tell me, it will summarize me what methods were used, and it will say on what page I can find this. So now I can follow up and ask questions like, I can say, what are the main results? And please bullet point list. I don't want to read entire paragraphs. I want a quick list. So this is just a GPT we can use. It gives me the main results. There they are. And it says these are on page 1 and 6. So this is a short paper. I think it's like maybe 10 pages. We can put in a larger paper as well. It doesn't have to be from research. If the university has some new norm and it's 40 pages, I tried this. We can upload it and ask if it affects a certain area, if the text is readable. Because what is behind this, it's actually very simple. I'm going to show you in a minute. We can do this in a few lines of Python as well. But when I was preparing this slide, that was 2 days ago, suddenly the news broke. Okay, now you can do the same with Bing. You don't have to go to a website anymore. Now you can do it from the sidebar in Bing. Okay, so if you open a PDF in Edge, you can do that. So this is going really fast. I opened Twitter this morning and I said, I don't want to see this because I showed you March with different events, different announcements. Now in April, it's several announcements at the same time per day. So this is what happened this week, for instance. So if you are first in Python, you load a PDF reader script, you load the OpenAI API, and then it's just you iterate over the pages and you ask for summaries, for instance, and you can read PDFs as well. It's pretty easy to do this, but that's not maybe what we're most interested in today. So I think we saw the 4 use cases. Some conclusions. Well, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to give me the conclusions, obviously. I'm going to ask it to give me a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So can you do a SWOT analysis of the use of ChatGPT by academic researchers? Of course. Time efficient, so it will help us speed up things. Wide knowledge base, well, that's disputable, but still it will suggest interesting things. Language support, that's very strong here. It's a collaboration tool. Well, not sure how that would be, but we can certainly explore it. So those are some very important strengths. Weaknesses, limited deep expertise. Well, it's not an expert in everything. Reliability, that's a very big warning here. Always check what it tells you. Lack of creativity, I'm not sure about that. It can give us inspiration, and I think often it's very creative. Overdependence, oh yes, this is one. When we start using it, we tend to rely on it, and the day we don't have internet connection, suddenly we have to use our original skills again. So it's a bit dangerous in that sense. Opportunities. Yes, so this is very interesting. If we're not expert in another field, we can get a sense of expert facts or expert things by interacting with ChatGPT. It can, like I showed, I'm not a translator, but I can get very good translations. But in different research fields, this might work as well. What else? Inclusion of emergent fields. Yes, well, maybe the last one, publication assistance. It can help us with formatting, proofreading, editing. Some threats. Yes, the first one is important. If we have a ChatGPT generated text, aren't we performing plagiarism because it's trained on text from other people? So proofreading and polishing is okay, but writing entire text it's not really okay, and we would have plagiarism concern. Misinterpretation of data. Yeah, sometimes it's not expert enough in the field where we're working, and it will maybe translate terms incorrectly. We have to check this. Job security, it will remove a lot of jobs. Yes, but it will create other jobs, certainly. Ethics is also an important point. This is trained on data, so it has all the biases from the data. The company is working to smooth this out, but still, there are ethical concerns. And, well, finally, some conclusions. As we saw today, generative AI can help us in several ways. It can help us with content creation. It can help us with automating repetitive tasks. And it can give us inspiration, insights, and ideas. And we also have to be careful. This is emergent technology. It's not finished. It will change, and it has certain dangers. So just to give you something more to go home, and these slides will be available. I maintain a repository with a lot of resources called Awesome Generative AI List. And if you check this, you can find more websites that are linked, more models like the ones we talked about today. And also for the ones that are interested in teaching, 3 of us, where are we? Marcos, Lara, and I will be giving a course on how researchers and teachers can use these tools in their research, a bit like today, but with more workshops, and also in teaching, because it changes teaching quite a bit. So that is all for me. I think we went into overtime, but we might have some time for questions. Thank you. Oh, yeah, please. That's a good question. So related to that, the question is it possible to distinguish between, you said, yeah, the question is if it's possible to distinguish between text that's completely generated and text we wrote and then polished. There's a discussion on that because there are some tools that pretend to check if a text was written by an AI. So here, for instance, we use one of the most used one. What's it called? Urkund. I think it's owned by Turnitin. In December, they said they detected this. They were on top of it, and then there was even something called ChatGPT 0, I think it was called, which was a model made by a student that made a lot of headlines. In my opinion, it is not possible to detect. And if it is a little bit possible now, within a few months, it will be impossible because it gets better all the time. And in order for it to work well, it seems that it needs a few thousand words to see really if it was written. Well, obviously there are obvious cases. I've seen cases where people write things with ChatGPT and they use the typical ChatGPT style. Dear sir, madam. If it's not the style you're expecting, then maybe somebody wrote it without checking the style. But what you say, I think it's not possible, and it's even dangerous because there are cases of teachers that have suspended, that have suspend is not the right word in Spanish. Teachers that have they have failed students by saying they used AI when it was not the case. So, in my opinion, it's not possible. I think it's not possible, but maybe that's yes. Maybe it's an ethical question. Yes. Yes. Okay, so the question is, isn't there a limit on the text you can feed it? Because both of them have a limit. I don't know if it's 8,000 tokens you can have in the conversation with one of them. That's true. There's a limit, but people have workarounds for that because they use external memories. It's something called vector search. They use services like LangChain and Pinecone, if one of these words rings a bell. So basically, they include other packages. They store memory in external services, and then you can have really long text there stored. They do some lookup in that memory from ChatGPT, and for the PDFs, I think you can. Well, the one I showed, I think when I used it, it was up to 80 pages. But using Pinecone and these frameworks, you can expand that. So obviously, this is connected with everything. People are connecting these technologies, and they're making really strange things as well, which I didn't talk about, like GPT bots that start doing everything itself and be completely autonomous, using all these things at the same time. But still, the limit you talk about, they use external packages to go over it. Diego, provocative question. Yes. Well, I checked it for Copilot for the code, and there they say that they have some safeguards, some measures in place to make sure that other people won't get our code as a suggestion. Yes, in Copilot. I haven't checked for the text, but still, the case for Italy, this does not comply with GDPR, with the European law. So what should happen at this point is it should be prohibited in all countries in Europe because it's not, or they should, the company should fix this basically. So Italy did actually the correct thing to prohibit it because it's not fulfilling the law. But that's because they store private data on their servers, and they should change that. As for if they use your private data, probably for data mining, but I don't think if you're working on something proprietary right now that they're gonna use that in their own projects. I think they do some mining on it, and probably it will. There's some privacy in place, but the problem with Italy, I thought, was mainly because they were storing it on servers outside of the European Union. Sorry? Well, but they tell you that, right? They say when you use it, where do we have this? Okay. I have a small disclaimer here. May produce inaccurate information. I think they say it always that you shouldn't trust it too much. So I don't think that's the problem. I think it's more where they store the private data. In the first row, yes. Okay, so the question is if there exists a detector for fake images or fake videos. Like I said, for text doesn't really work well. For video, the answer is simple, because fake video right now is you can detect it by, well, depends. Sometimes they have artifacts and you can see it like that. But like the ones I showed before, I talked about Gen 2, they create video from text. So there you can see it because it's very basic still. But there are also others that do like deep fakes where they swap faces of people. These are very advanced already, and you really need an expert to spot artifacts in the video. So it's become a little hard. And in images, you can spot small mistakes sometimes. If you take a look at the hands of people, that was typically the case. The hands weren't well formed. Or before that, it was the ears. When we had the fake images of people's heads, you could see that the ears were not correct. I don't know about automatic detectors that do this, but still, it's visual today, and maybe in a few months it's hard. I guess I get confirmation from behind. Yes, I think this will be very difficult. So that's why I started with some fake images that look like real. We live in a world where it's very hard to distinguish now, and it's not going to get any easier, I guess, because I think theoretically, once we get these real fake images, there won't be an artificial intelligence that can say this one is fake because of some visual characteristic. I think in order to guarantee that an image is real, we need some outside mechanism that verifies that an image was real, really taken by somebody, or somebody has to tell it, because just the visual properties, I think, won't make it possible. There might be some. There might be. I don't know about it. It's officially for Visual Studio Code, which is Microsoft's editor, and it's their project. For PyCharm, okay. PyCharm, yes. I assume that there might be some hacking efforts to get it to work in other environments as well. But okay, PyCharm, I didn't know it, but I used it in Visual Studio Code just to see how it works. And okay, more questions? If I understand well, your question is if the metadata can be used to check if an image is real. I think metadata can be changed very simply. So I don't think that's a visually not. I think visually these are only getting better, and well, DALL-E, if you know DALL-E, they include a little watermark, a few blocks. Bing does this as well. It includes some little blocks, so at least we know it was generated by them. They do this, but if you use another pack, or if you crop it, it's gone already. So, and metadata, I wouldn't count on metadata. More questions? Yes. Yes. So if I understand, you're saying that for images, if you somehow cryptographically sign the image, yes, you can do that. And I don't know if you mean adding the signature as a watermark or as a metadata. You can certainly protect images, but that's again metadata. You can put a watermark on it. You could do that as well. I suppose if you put a watermark, you change the content. So that's not. But for me, that's like metadata. The visual properties, I think, will be indistinguishable at some point. Yes, but that would be like for me an outside server. I would be like saying, okay, I guarantee that this image is that I took this picture and it's correct. You can sign it and you can publish that. And you can, yes, you can obviously do that. But the question is if an image appears that is not signed. So there has to be a discussion about this. And so at the moment we have to trust verified sources that say this is real, this is not real. So had I known you were that interested in images, maybe I had included another use case. Yeah, in our course there, which I said at the end, we will give some use case for images. Patricio, yes. Yes. So this is no. There's a whole discussion about that because these models can be trained to generate 3D models that can then be 3D printed, for instance. So it's not that hard, and there have been many examples of doing that, like connecting them, and there are discussions about where does this lead us. There are people that think they can connect to any service that's working on the internet that produces things. So if you find a company that produces something where for instance 3D printing, by simply accessing their API and sending them some information, these AIs could do that. They could start producing things by contacting with companies where this is automated. So it would be the case. They could produce parts of machines. I've read discussions about how they could produce molecules or chemical compositions by contacting with companies that have this automated. That's an option. It's a possibility, I mean. And it's a whole different discussion then, because we talked about how we can use this, but other people are talking about how this is going to end the world. And it's an extreme vision, but there's a lot of discussion on that as well. Well, change it. Definitely, in my opinion, this has, well, normally we have changes, technology brings changes, right? And they're kind of gradual. Maybe there's a new step in technology, gives us some new options. But now we got a lot of new options at the same time, and this affects a lot of areas at the same time. So lack of control. That's also right. A lack of laws about this. So these examples I showed you of conferences and journals, they're trying to control this a little bit, but there have to be laws as well. It's not clear what the copyright is. There are all kinds of ethical problems with this. So for the copyright, for instance, if I generate a text, is this my text now? Is it GPT's text? Is it OpenAI text? This week we saw this week there was a release of an album by the English band Oasis. So there was a new album by Oasis. What was not Oasis? It was AISIS, and it was AISIS. They took the vocals of the lead singer, they trained an AI on that, and then they I think they made their own music with the same guitar sound, and they produced an entire album called The Lost Tapes. Now, I think this will be clear, because if you take the vocals from somebody, you're stealing his vocals in some way. But often it's not as clear who the copyright belongs to. And music copyright is very well protected and very well guarded. So when this enters music, we will see a lot of legal battles. More questions? All right. Gracias. Y ahora si quieres tomar un café y hablar más de esto, hay mucho que hablar. Hay mucho que hablar. Porque, sí, porque esto da...
Dejarla donde estaba, por favor.
Bueno, un éxito, ¿no?
Muy bien, sí.
¿Qué tal? ¿Cuánta gente conectada?
No está quitado todavía. Espera.
No, esto es el puntero, ¿eh?
Ah, vale.